36 weeks and 2 days, doing a couple of videos today and telling my birth stories. So for this video, I'll be telling you about Owen's birth, and he is our third child. Now, as I've said previously, these are unscripted, so I do apologize if the story is a little bit all over the place. I will try to be as succinct as I can. But yes, I learned so much from each of their births and gained more and more confidence each time I gave birth. And with Owen, I again prepared with hypnobirthing. Now this time I wanted to do like a different course. I had done hypnobirthing with a midwife, and she had just done like a private session in our home, which was really good and a great introduction to it. But I wanted to, look at what other hypnobirthing options were out there. And at the time I came across hypnobabies, and they are an American course created by an American hypnotherapist. And they had a home study option. So that's what I did. And I gained a lot of knowledge from this course, and a lot of it was the same, but it just reinforced what I had already learned, and of course gave me even more confidence. So obviously there's a few little differences, which to be honest I couldn't tell you because it's all sort of jumbled in my mind, all in one big blur, all my hypnobirthing knowledge. So but yeah, I really enjoyed the course and enjoyed the scripts and the listening to the CDs. And one thing that I did notice is, whereas with the other hypnobirthing course that I did, there was just one CD that came with the book. And whilst I learnt so much from it, I just could not listen to that CD. There was something about the lady's accent that I don't know, it just didn't gel with me. But whereas this, the hypnobabies, the accent for this hypnotherapist, was fine. So like for me, so I listened to all the scripts and the CDs. So that added another kind of element to it for me. Now let's see. There is even less to say about Owen's birth because it was even faster. So I went from a 17-hour birth to a 6-hour birth, and this one was only 3 hours. And I was a lot more confident, so there was a lot less fears to work through. One of the fears that I did have in the lead up to Owen's birth was, like, I had given birth twice before. One was traumatic, one was empowering and positive, but there was a little part of me the third time around that thought, what if that was just a fluke? Or, what if it's not? Like, you hear so many different experiences and different stories, and someone had mentioned to me, that they did fine in their first 2 births, and then their third was just totally different. So there was a little part of me that was like, oh, what if this one is going to throw a spanner in the works and it's going to be completely different? And what if it's a challenge again, or what if it's traumatic again? So I did preparation, and I guess I faced that fear probably just by, rationalizing that was just me being paranoid. And I probably did, made an affirmation around it or something. So I don't remember specifically, but I remember that as one of my fears. And let's see, but one fear that I did have was, what if, hypnobirthing works so well and that I'm so relaxed that I don't make it to the hospital on time. And so what I did was, I do remember creating an affirmation for that. And I don't remember the exact words, but it would have been something along the lines of, I will know the perfect time to go to the hospital. And yeah, so that was that. So the preparation was fairly easy. Had the home study course. Yeah, there's not too much to report about it. Okay. All right. So then the birth. came now. This time on a Sunday, I started feeling a little bit off. And so we decided not to go to church that day just because we were like, oh, I felt a little off with Kai. Maybe this is it. But then nothing really happened. So we had basically Sunday as just a relaxing day and realized that it wasn't anything. But it kind of gave us the heads up that something might be happening pretty soon. Actually, and things did kick into gear the very next day. But before I get to that, I just remembered that one of the things about Owen's birth was that for the first time, I was a little bit like over my due date. So I'd gotten to 41 weeks and, at the 41-week appointment with my midwife, and we were sort of just starting to go, oh no, they're going to start talking about induction and come on baby, why aren't you out yet? And I was starting to stress a little bit about, I certainly wasn't going to consent to an induction, but I was feeling the pressure, like, I just want this baby out. When are you coming? And, that whole feeling like you're going to be pregnant forever sort of thing. And one of the things that I learnt, particularly from Owen's birth, so he came at 10 days past his estimated due date, which I don't believe is late. So I hate it how we call it like late. Babies aren't late. They don't have a clock in there. But he was 10 days past his estimated due date. And that's about the time that you start getting, well, the medical system that we have here in Australia is usually booking you in for an induction at that point. Luckily, I had a very supportive midwife on caseload who understood exactly how I felt and was very supportive. And so she just had to basically, document in her notes that I had declined. But I still felt the pressure. And the big thing I learned from that is to just not stress about it. Because he came at 10 days past and there was no issues and there was no reason that whole time to stress. Because of course he was going to come. All babies will come eventually. And yeah, so that was a big learning thing for me. I know in our little slideshow that I created for Owen, like after Owen's birth, I even had this comment, we thought you were never going to come. And I just, like, that sort of shows how anxious I was about, that he was 10 days over. And it was really nothing to worry at all about the whole time. So I'm certainly not going to be feeling that way this time. You can be 10 days over, you can be 12 days over. I wouldn't even mind if you're 14 days over. It'd be nice if it was before 42 weeks. I know a few people who have gone beyond 42. So, I have different sort of mixed feelings about that, but it would be nice if it was before 42, but there's certainly absolutely no hurry. There's no anxiety about when this baby comes. But yeah, so anyway, so he came 10 days past his estimated due date. So it was the Sunday, nothing ended up happening that day, but on Monday morning, and it was around about, around about 4:30 in the morning that I woke up and realized that I was having pressure waves. Now this time I was calling them pressure waves. That's one of the terms used in hypnobabies, which is very similar to other programs that use the term waves. So I was having pressure waves and I realized, like, I woke up to them and started just watching the clock. I wasn't timing it precisely, but noticed that they were 5 minutes apart already. So I was like, okay, things are heating up. And I wasn't really comfortable in bed. I tried staying in bed as long as I could, but pretty soon was feeling just uncomfortable and not painful, just like I just needed to be upright. And so I grabbed the birth ball. I call it a birth ball, but it's just like a fit ball, like a fitness thing. And popped that beside the bed and did some rocking and leaning against the bed. And then soon after that, I was like, no, I really want to get in the bath. So the bath was my space, just like it was in Kai's birth. I'd used it a lot for relaxation. I had a particular music track that I listened to that just had like relaxation music. And that had, I'd used that in Kai's birth as well. So it was very familiar and comforting to me. So pretty soon I hit the bath, got in the bath, and I was doing my breathing and all the same stuff. And it was really nice. I was a lot more confident this time on that it is going to work and that I know what I'm doing. I've done this before, and to just use those tools. It worked last time, so it'll work this time. And I remember one aspect about it was that we were timing the pressure waves, and I remember saying to Mark, I don't know if it started yet. Like I couldn't tell when the pressure wave started. Like I could feel my tummy going hard, like it was contracting, but I wasn't really feeling any sensation at all. It was just completely numb. And then when you have a pressure wave or a contraction, it kind of increases in intensity, hits a peak, and then dips back down. And it was once it hit that peak that I was like, oh, yep, that's definitely a pressure wave. It's definitely a contraction. So that sort of is a bit indicative of how well the hypnosis or the hypno tools were working for me, that I wasn't even feeling any sort of pain at all at this stage. And so, and that peak wasn't pain. It was just, again, like that, just that kind of annoying kind of feeling, like someone's, I don't know, so there's a similar level of intensity as if someone were like giving you a Chinese burn. And I apologize if that's not a politically correct term. I don't know what else to call it. Anyway, so that it hit the peak, and I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely a pressure wave. And so we were having trouble like timing, because I didn't know when the beginning of it was, because it just felt like nothing. But after a while, they did get closer together, and we of course let our midwife know and let her know that we wanted to come in. I've always kind of had Mark on the phone, because I'm, talking to the midwife, because I'm usually quite insular or, focused inward during the birth. So he was communicating with her over the phone, and it was, of course, starting to get intense. And that's when I was like, yeah, I want to be at the hospital now. I just want to be there. So we did the transfer to hospital, and I remember saying in the car that, because one of my beliefs is if you have a fear, you need to let it out. So you need to, first of all, acknowledge it. And one way to do that is to say it out loud, to let it out. And that's one step toward letting it go. And one of my fears when I was in the car, because we'd only been at home for like an hour and a half, like it was around 6 in the morning that we decided to go to the hospital. So I'd only been in labor for 1.5 hours, and as we were driving, I realized the fear of mine was, what if this is too soon? It just seemed like this was a lot sooner than we had gone to the hospital previously. And what if I get there and I'm only a few centimeters, just like I was the first time around, like with Aiden. So that was one of my fears. And once again, I don't know if it was coincidence or if my midwife always does this, but we met her in the car park as we were going into the hospital. And the moment I saw her, I just hugged her. I just remember hugging her. And I just, once again, I just really needed her presence. I just wanted her there, and I felt so safe and comforted when I saw her. And I hugged her, and she was just her beautiful self. And I remember saying to her, I'm afraid that I'm not as far along as I think I am. And as I said that, I had this pressure wave where I started doing like a little grunty sound. And if you've given birth before, you'll know what I'm talking about. But just a little demo is like when you're breathing up with your surges or your pressure waves or contractions, whatever you'd like to call them, you'll, like, once your body starts moving into stage 2, like moving toward pushing baby out and bearing down, just in that transition period, you'll start to grunt as you breathe. So I was breathing, obviously, and then, you know, I must have said something like, oh, I'm really afraid that I'm not as far along as I think I am. And I had this little grunt, this involuntary grunt, and that's obviously a sign that things really are progressing nicely. And she just kind of laughed, you know, really warmly and said, I think you've got nothing to worry about, Krista. And so then we made our way up, which again was a really long walk, and things were really starting to get intense. So I was, of course, encouraged that things were progressing. And once she said that, I was, you know, I realized, oh yeah, things are moving because I can feel that my body's starting to push. But I wanted, like, my instinct was to then go within, like go totally within and not, you know, I didn't want to be concentrating on walking. So I was almost, whenever I was having a pressure wave, I was almost like I was doing my hypno stuff, which was going floppy. And my midwife and husband were like basically carrying me. So that probably wasn't very helpful, but I blamed the layout of the hospital. So it really was time for me to go within and start bringing my baby into the world. But instead, we were kind of still on our way up to the birthing suite. So that was a little awkward. But once we got there, I mean, obviously, sometimes babies come out within a couple of pushes. So it, you know, like within 15 minutes of a woman feeling like she needs to bear down or breathe her baby out or push or whatever it is for each individual, you know, sometimes within 15 minutes you have a baby there. We got to the birthing suite at around 6:30, and I was still, or probably a little bit before 6:30, but I was still in that kind of bearing down, and things were getting more intense, but there was no show of baby. And that's not a huge concern, because sometimes babies take a little longer to move down the birth canal. But it was certainly quite intense for me because my body was pushing all this time, and those pushing surges were just like, they were starting to feel really overwhelming. Like, sometimes people describe pushing as the best feeling ever. Well, for me, it was so intense, and I wouldn't have described it as the best feeling ever. It was near overwhelming, but because I was so well equipped, like mentally and emotionally, I'd been very well prepared with my hypno tools. It wasn't overwhelming, but I could kind of feel it in my mind. I was like, there was a little fight going on, going, oh my goodness, this is really feeling like just more than I can bear. But then my other was going, no, just breathe, you're fine, you got to relax. And, you know, so I was doing really well with it, but just feeling like I don't really want this to go on for too much longer. And so I asked my midwife, what can we do? Is there anything you can do to help me? Because well, I don't know how much I explained to her, because I was beyond talking by this point. But she did a sort of like a vaginal exam, kind of in whatever position I was in, and she confirmed that there was a cervical lip. And so that means where the cervix has dilated fully, so you're open, but there's just like this tiny little bit left on the side. And so as baby's being pushed, it's kind of hitting the cervix, and it's sort of obstructing. And that, again, that's not necessarily a terrible thing. Like, it's all normal, in that there's a wide range of normal when it comes to birth. And part of it could, one explanation for a cervical lip is that your body, that pushing against the cervix actually helps to rotate the baby into an optimal position anyway. So it may have even had a purpose. But what it did mean for me is that it was a very intense moment. And as with each push, it was not feeling good at all. And I was just wanting it to be over. So in that moment, I did ask if the midwife could help, and she said, well, pretty much the only thing she can do is to try and pull the cervix across, which obviously wouldn't be comfortable, but I was incredibly uncomfortable at this point, so I didn't care. But what it did entail is me moving from the bathroom, because at this stage I was on all fours in the bathroom, and my hubby had like a, you know, the shower head directly on my back, because there was a lot of sensations going on in my back. And she said, well, I'd need you to move to the, like out of the bathroom, not onto the bed, but onto the floor mat there, and flip over into sort of a, you know, like a reclined position on the floor, so she could do the maneuver thing. And I don't know if I said anything to her, but in my head, I'm like, well, that's not happening because I cannot move. Like, I cannot move from this space. I was so, it was just intense at that point that I was like, I'm not moving anywhere. So I guess I just, you know, I kept using my hypno tools and my breathing, and I started problem solving in my mind. I was beyond communication at this point. And so in my mind, I was thinking, right, what have I got to do? And I just instinctively, the first thing I did was visualize my cervix melting away like butter. And, you know, like how when you melt butter, it just kind of melts away. So I was using visualization, and I imagined my cervix just melting away, melting. And I had this image in my mind, and I was probably saying some words in my mind. It wasn't, it was all internal. And then instinctively at some point, I don't remember how many surges or waves I had before I did this, but I reached inside and was, you know, felt around and just sort of gently pulled with a, during a pressure wave, I think. And it's not that I would recommend for anyone else to do that. Like, it was very instinctive though. I'm totally for women following their bodies and their instinct. And if your instinct says do that, then go for it. But that's what my instinct was telling me, that I needed that little bit of help, because I couldn't, at the time, I didn't feel patient enough to just wait. It was really quite overwhelming at that point. Overwhelming, but not overwhelming, if you know what I mean. I was dealing, on the outside, I looked like I was coping fine. But on the inside, I was like really not wanting this to, again, I'm sort of repeating myself here, but not wanting this to go on for too much longer. So I reached in and helped pull it across. And of course, that wasn't particularly comfortable, but I was already uncomfortable. And I just followed, because it was me touching me, it wasn't like I was able to kind of follow my own, like, you know, I could feel what was going on, and I was the driver. I don't know how else to explain it. So it's a little bit different to if the midwife had been doing it, because she can't feel what I'm feeling. She can only know what I'm telling her. Anyway, so I felt it kind of pop, like not pop as in anything bad, but just like kind of flick off, you know, so his head kind of finally went past the cervix. And then I just had this image, and this is, I don't know if I should share this, but again, I used visualization a lot. And I had this image then in my head, because I was on all fours, and I just imagined like myself, like I was a cannon. And I don't know if this sounds kind of silly, but this is just what popped into my head at the time. And I was like, because beforehand I was like, once this cervix is gone, I'm shooting this baby out of my body. And it was kind of like this image of a cannon and a baby shooting out of it. Anyway, so I was on all fours and imagining, you know, a cannon. And basically he came up very, very soon after that, because he was past the cervix now and crowned. And then at that point, the midwife's like, Mark, quick, because we had wanted, if possible, if the situation was able to play out this way, we wanted Mike to catch baby. And so she's like, quick, baby's coming. And so he quickly got around there and, you know, caught him, but it was really slippery. So he almost dropped him, but he didn't. But it was all like a bit of a fumbling kind of thing. And I'd never, ever imagined birthing on all fours before. I'd always liked the idea of being in a squatting position or like upright, but where I could see what was going on. But because I was on all fours, I couldn't see what was going on behind me. I just was visualizing a cannon and a baby shooting out. And then Mark catches him and he's all a bit slippery, but doesn't drop him. And then we've got this photo of me like lifting my leg over and while he passes baby under. It was all very awkward. And but amazing as well, because I was like, yes, it's over. And it was incredible. The hypno tools worked so amazingly, particularly at the beginning where I couldn't even tell when I was having a pressure wave. But even when it was intense, and intense to the point where I was starting to feel like we're heading toward it being overwhelming, it was only intense for a very short period of time, relatively speaking. Like it was only an hour where I felt, you know, it was super intense. But all those hypno tools, they were just second nature by then. And I just used them to help me get through it, help me problem solve, help me, you know, manage all of those different sensations and the little obstacle we had with the cervical lift. So it was just an incredible moment. It was, obviously I didn't enjoy the cervical lip, but the fact that afterwards, there was no issue with his breathing or anything like that. Like with Kai, there was the mild shoulder dystocia, which meant he was a little bit floppy, when meaning he wasn't breathing as well just when he first came out. He recovered fine, if you've already listened to that video. But this baby, he was perfect. He had, he was, you know, was alert and you know, he was showing signs that he was all fine and perfect. And so it was just lovely. It was a real we did it moment. And I think that's what I have in my the slideshow that I created after his birth. It was like you know, I've got a caption, we did it. And it was, I just felt like we were such a team and that it was all, yeah, it all just played out beautifully. And for it to have happened so quickly, and if it wasn't for the cervical lip, he would have been born in 2 hours, but 3 hours, it was just incredible. And what I found really interesting was when I was visualizing that birth, so beforehand when I was pregnant and I was imagining how I wanted the birth to go, I remember specifically writing this down in a forum, one of the Hypno Babies forums, or, you know, writing how I wanted my birth to go. And one of the things I said was I want it to be 2 to 4 hours, and it was almost dead on 3 hours. And it was, yeah, just amazing that, I mean, who knows, maybe it's a coincidence. I think it's a bit too close to be a coincidence though. If I'm visualizing 2 to 4 and then he comes in 3 hours, that's pretty interesting coincidence. But so I would attribute that to the hypnosis or the like the tools, the hypno tools and visualizing. And yeah, like it did actually take me a little while to process the birth though, because that last hour was really intense. But once again, I was able to come to see that I had used all my hypno tools. And of course it's going to be intense. There was a physical reason for that because of the cervical lip. But you know, the hypno tools just worked. Like, I don't like to say like magic, because it's not magic. It's you. It was me choosing to use those tools, and to use the breathing, and to use my affirmations, and to use the visualization, to you know, help me stay relaxed and you know, letting my body do what it needed to do. So that was Owen's birth, and it was incredibly fast. We kind of laughed that it was probably a bit more intense than I had wanted, but maybe that's just how fast births are. So not necessarily though, I just think at the time it was, yeah, anyway. Let's see, and yeah, we just had a beautiful, a beautiful time in the hospital. We just stayed a few hours and then went home at midday. So that was really nice to be at home straight away and to just be able to rest in my own bed and not to be, I really, really don't like that partners are separated after the birth. For many women, when they stay in the hospital, their partner needs to go home and then they're kind of left alone. And at the most beautiful time when they've just become a family, or they've just added to their family. Some women love it, and that's, you know, each to their own. But I feel like it's not very family friendly. So I definitely enjoyed going home together and not having to stay overnight at hospital. And one last thing that I'll mention, like apart from the birth, is that afterwards, I always sort of had this attitude of like, oh, I'm Superwoman and I can just bounce back. And what I did is, I think on day 3 or day 4, maybe it was Thursday. So he was born on Monday, and on Thursday, I kind of overdid it that day. And I did, not by much. I was just sitting up all day working on the slideshow, like going through the photos and creating a little slideshow with music in the background and some captions. And the next day on the Friday, I was so sick, and it turned out that I'd gotten an infection. And so one caution I would say is to rest, rest, rest. Even if you've had an amazing birth and you feel great, your body is still recovering. It's still, you know, putting everything back to normal. And that takes time and that takes energy. And if you're using your energy doing something else, then you're taking away from the energy that your body needs to repair things and to keep all the bacteria under control. And that's when they get out of control, that's when you get an infection. Anyway, that's my little theory, that you need to really rest. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of, you know, like that you're not Superwoman. You are Superwoman. You just gave birth. However it is that you gave birth, you are Superwoman. And it's an amazing experience giving birth, but then respect the process. And the process hasn't finished because your body is now repairing and recovering. And it's not recovering in the sense that it was an illness, but it's recovering in the sense that it just grew a baby for 9 months. And now it's getting your body back to its pre-pregnancy state. So have a little respect for that and give yourself time and rest. And you know, if you need support, then make sure you ask for support. Anyway, maybe I'll do another video on postpartum stuff, but definitely I learned a lot from that experience. Getting an infection, you're almost, I couldn't lift my head off the pillow. I was just so sick. And I felt like it was so unnecessary for me to have gotten to that point, because it wasn't because of anything bad. I just overworked myself, and so my body got run down when it was still in recovery mode. Anyway, so that is the birth of Owen, and I'm now looking forward to baby number 4. I'm curious how it's going to go. I'm sure it will be amazing. Like, it's going to be a home birth, so that'll be a new element. We're going to hopefully have photos and maybe some video, so we'll see if we get anything that I feel comfortable sharing. I know with my photos of Owen's birth, which were just taken by the midwife or Mark, you know, we've only got a few, but I had to like totally crop it because I wasn't quite comfortable, you know, showing my entire naked self to the world. So we'll see what we have after this birth to share, but it would be really lovely if to share it all. And what else did I want to say? Just to really encourage you to record your birth story. And one little tip about writing your birth stories down is, first of all, when you write it, you don't have to feel like you're going to share it. Like, you could just write it for yourself. and then put it in your journal or whatever it is, and, you know, save it on your computer or save it somewhere that you're not going to lose it. And then after you've written it, you might decide, or you might feel comfortable that you'd like to share it with others, whether it's just with friends or just with family, or whether you put it up on a blog or share it with your doula or your hypnobirthing practitioner. You might feel comfortable getting the story out there, and those stories can be so inspiring for other women, and particularly first-time mothers, but also other mothers who may have had a traumatic experience previously and are looking for those stories. And your story might be the one that connects with them and helps them to prepare for an amazing birth. And so please write your birth story down. Whether or not you share it with the world is your choice, but have it written or recorded as a video for yourself, and maybe even for your child. Maybe when they're older, you can share their birth story with them. And one thing about that, just another little tip, is don't just recount what happened. This is what I think. Talk about what happened. Maybe, you know, like write a paragraph of what happened, and then write how you felt about it, or how you felt at the time, if you can remember. And then maybe you might even share how you feel now about it after reflecting on it for a month or two, or even years, if you're writing it years after the birth. But definitely don't leave it to your memory, because you will forget some details. And it's just such a special experience that I just feel so blessed to have had the experience of giving birth. And I really treasure it. And yeah, so write it down or record it in some way while it's fresh in your mind. Okay, so I'd love to hear from you. You know, anything you have to share about your births, or writing your birth story, or whatever it might be. Did you notice that your feelings changed over time? Did you have someone help you to process your birth? So I noticed even with Owen's birth, it was an incredibly positive experience, and yet there was still processing I had to do. I wasn't sure if I wanted a fourth after that one, just because it was so intense at the end. And I just had to process that. So yeah, did you have any processing to do? Did you talk it over with your midwife, or your partner, or a friend, you know, whoever it might be, or your doula? So yeah, I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.